Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Still to the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Acharya. Still to the Sri Srimad, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bol, all glories to these simple devotees, Hare Krishna, all glories to these simple devotees, Hare Krishna, all glories to these simple devotees, Hare Krishna, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prasthaya, Bhutale, Shrimate, Bhakti Vikasa, Swaminiti Namane. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10, titled Bhagavatam is the Answer to All Questions, Text 28. Did I pull it up or? Are you pulling it up or no?
Oh, no.
Oh, no, okay. I got it.
What is it?
Text 28. 2:10:28.
I can do it.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
2:10:28.
Yes.
Okay, you can start word to word.
Asisripsoho Puraha Puryaha Nabhi Dvaram Apanataha Tatra Apanaha Tataha Mrityuhu Pitaktvam Ubhaya Ashrayam Asisripso Puraf Purya Asisripso Puraf Purya Nabhidvaram Apanataha Nabhidvaram Apanataha Tatrapanastato Mrityu Tatrapanastato Mrityu Pritaktvam Upayashrayam Pritaktvam Upayashrayam Asisripsof Puraf Purya Nabhidvaram Apanataha Tatrapanastato Mrityu Pritaktvam Upayashrayam Asisripsof Puraf Purya Nabhidvaram Apanataha Tatrapanastato Mrityu Pritaktvam Upayashrayam Asisripsof Puraf Purya
Nabhidvaram Apanataha
Nabhidvaram Apanataha
Tatrapanastato Mrityu Pritaktvam Upayashrayam
Upayashrayam Asisripso Puraf Purya Nabhidvaram Apanataha
Tatrapanastato Mrityu Pritaktvam Upayashrayam
Matadis Asisripso Puraf Purya
Nabhidvaram apanataha tatrapanasthato mrityu Utthaptvam bhayashram Asasutso purapurya Nabhidvaram apanataha tatrapanasthato mrityu Utthaptvam
Vayashrayam. Asasupso purapurya.
Nabhidvaram apanataha
Sorry, can I get some warm water?
Yeah.
My throat's a little.
tatrapanasthato
Mityu. Takvam upayashrayam. Asisupsoho.
Asasutso
Desiring to go everywhere.
desiring to go everywhere.
Puraha.
Puraha
In different bodies.
in different bodies.
Puryaha.
Puryaha
From one body.
from one body.
Nabhi.
Nabhi
Dvaram.
Dvaram
The navel or abdominal hole.
the navel or abdominal hole.
Apanataha.
Apanataha
Was manifested.
was manifested.
Tatra.
Tatra
Thereupon.
thereupon
Apanaha.
apanaha
Stopping of the vital force.
stopping of the vital force.
Tataha.
Tataha
Thereafter.
thereafter
Mrityuhu.
mrityuhu
Death.
death.
Pritaktvam.
Tattvam
Separately.
separately.
Ubhaya.
Bhaya
Both.
both.
Ashrayam.
Ashrayam
Shelter.
shelter.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thereafter, when he desired to move from one body to another, the navel and the air of departure and death were combinedly created. The navel is the shelter for both, namely death and the separating force. Purport. The prana vayu continues this life, and the apana vayu stops the living force. Both the vibrations are generated from the abdominal hole, the navel. This navel is the joint from one body to the other. Lord Brahma was born of the abdominal hole of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu as a separate body, and the same principle is followed even in the birth of any ordinary body. The body of the child develops from the body of the mother, and when the child is separated from the body of the mother, it is separated by cutting the navel joint, and that is the way the Supreme Lord manifested himself as separated many. The living entities are therefore separated parts, and thus they have no independence. Om Ajnanatirmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Pishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadanti Kam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utaf Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupam Sahagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Srivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitams Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gauranki Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranmami Hari Pre Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhi Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivikasa Swaminiti Namine Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshitarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yasya Devi Parabhaktir Yata Tevi Tatagaro Tasyaite Katitar Yata Prakashante Mahatmanaha Vagisha Yasya Vadane Lakshmi Yasya Javaksasi Yasyas Devi Samvitham Nasimham Ham Bhaje Asisripsof Puraf Purya Nabhi Dvaram Apanataha Tatra Panas Tato Mrityu Pritaktvam Upayashrayam. Thereafter, when he desired to move from one body to another, the navel and the air of departure and death were combinedly created. The navel is the shelter for both, namely death and the separating force. So we've been going through all these different manifestations of different senses and sensory organs and such. And today we arrive at the navel. And actually, I've read through this part of the Bhagavatam before, but I guess I didn't retain much of it because I don't remember this part, but I found very interesting that I didn't realize before that the navel is a shelter for these things, death and the separating force. And Of course, it makes sense that the child is born and it's connected to the mother via the navel, so it has a very intricate part in death and birth and death. And so I'll just dive into that a little bit. One of the first things that's talked about, the very beginning of this translation that made me think about is thereafter when he desired to move from one body to another. So this is obviously alluding to the fact of reincarnation, and that the soul is ultimately transmigrating through many different births and deaths in this material world from one body to another. And this is the nature of this world. It's temporary, and we have this cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease that we go through. And this is talking about the mechanics of how that's happening, that the soul is leaving the body through the navel and going on to its next destination. And this fact of reincarnation is a very important concept to hammer and to truly accept, and through all the evidence that's there, and you can very easily hypothesize and use your intelligence to understand that it's a fact. There's this, Dehinos minyata dehe kaumanam yalvanam jala tata dehantara praptir diras tacha namuyati, that the embodied soul is moving from boyhood to youth to old age. And similarly, at the time of death, the soul goes to another body. So that's one easy way to see that this soul is different from the body, and also the soul is changing bodies right in front of our own eyes. I tell this to people a lot of times when we're preaching on books or on college campuses or whatever, and they ask about reincarnation, or it comes up in some way, and I say, yeah, you can prove it right here. And it's very easy to see that this body we're in, compared to the body of a baby that we were in not so long ago, it's completely different. Every cell is completely different. There's not a single thing that's similar in that body, but yet the person that's embodying that body, or the soul that's within that body, is the same person. You don't change your name and your identity every 7 years when these cells are regenerated, or the old cells die and the new ones are born. You don't become a completely new person with a different name or anything like that. You stay the same person throughout your life, and you're simply the observer of these changes, ultimately. Everything may change from the outside perspective. Your mindset, your habits, your ideas, your beliefs, all these things might change, but ultimately who you are as a person, the spirit soul itself, remains unchanging in these circumstances. And more on reincarnation, we're kind of doing a little bit of research for this, for a video that we're wanting to make. My Guru Maharaj, Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, is very strong on this point that we should preach, especially in the West, because it is mostly accepted, as far as I know, in India, that reincarnation is a fact. But we need to preach this strongly in the West, because the atheistic scientists have completely overtaken the intellectual, taken over the minds of the general society and convinced them that their way is correct, that this world has come from dead matter, and that life has come from dead matter. But there's actually plenty of scientific evidence of reincarnation being a fact. And we were watching this video, me and Chandan Acharya Prabhu, a while ago, of this. It's a devotee actually, and he makes videos kind of like we were making, and he's trying to preach Krishna consciousness and explain it in simple terms. But he was telling some few different anecdotes that I'll explain now, just because I found them really interesting, and they have to do with reincarnation. So there was this kid, and he was 5 or 6 years old or so, and he kept telling his parents about remembering being like a fighter pilot in World War II or something like that, and he had all these details. He would have nightmares actually of being shot down and killed, and very vivid nightmares. And so that's, okay, that's child's imagination, you can dismiss it as that. But then, I believe it's the same kid, there's this video of him, and he was very interested in planes, obviously, because he comes from that, he was a pilot, so he knew all these things about planes. He had this inclination to know about planes and learn about them. But he was 5 or 6 years old, very young, to the level he definitely wouldn't be able to understand the complexities of plane mechanics and aerodynamics and such. But there's a video of him in the cockpit of a plane, talking to the pilots, and he's explaining all these maneuvers, and he's pointing to different controls on. And if you've ever seen the cockpit of a plane, it looks very crazy, like it looks like a spaceship or something. It's like so many switches and buttons and stuff. Any person that doesn't know what's going on would not be able to comprehend anything of what those switches do and buttons do. But he was able to point to every single thing and say, this does that, and if you're in this situation, you have to do this and maneuver in this specific way. And he explained it in such a way that only an expert could do. But he was 5 or 6 years old, and I believe this is also before like the internet and like you could just look it up on YouTube and learn it or whatever. But even then, even if he could look it up on YouTube, he had it in terms of like realized experience. Like it was like as if he had lived it and he knew it deep within his, with his soul. So this is, there's so many examples like this. There was another example in this video of a child from Sri Lanka that was born, and he remembered being in a family in India. And I don't remember all the details, but he remembered like his aunt had this certain restaurant and all these details. And then the really mind-blowing one was that he knew about a spot within like the house that, okay, they'd constructed a new house, the family, when he was a child or whatever, when he was there and that other family. And he was able to recall a time when he imprinted his name, I guess, on like concrete or something like that. You know how like fresh concrete, you can write something in it. He did that, but none of his family knew about it. So only he knew about this. And then he died in that body, and he was born in Sri Lanka, and he was able to say, my name is carved in this like corner over here. Like, and then they went and looked, and they found it, and they were shocked. Like it was there. So there's so many cases like that. Actually, there's researchers that have done research and explored into this idea, and they found thousands of such cases all over. And because it's anecdotal, because it's not something that can be proven with like the scientific method, I suppose, mainstream science just tends to disregard it. And perhaps it's also because it goes against everything that they believe in, and they would kind of throw all of material science on its head and cause a lot of turmoil in the scientific community. So they would rather not address that, because they'd rather just stick to what they have. This is actually the case with most science, is that the status quo is what tends to stick, rather than actually going with the evidence, going with the true scientific method. So yeah, that's just one little anecdote. And there's other examples, like so many people have these near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences. That there's another example of a lady that was getting a surgery done, and she was declared clinically dead, and then she was revived in some way, and she recalled being above her body and watching the doctors operate on her so-called dead body, and she was able to, in detail, recall everything that had happened and like what the doctors were saying and these kinds of things. That there would have been no way for her to do that, because her body was technically dead. If we are just the body, that would have been impossible. But so this is evidence that the soul is there. The soul is the one that's actually bringing consciousness to this body that's just full of matter. And as soon as the soul leaves the body, that consciousness goes away, and the body just becomes a hunk of dead matter, just like anything else. So yeah, that's this idea of reincarnation. Again, it just made me think of that, because this is what's being created. This the Lord is desiring to move from one body to another, and so this navel is being created in that way. Of course, the Lord, he moves from one body to another in a much different way than we do. He comes down into the material world to protect his devotees, bring pleasure to the devotees, and show his pastimes, and also to eradicate the miscreants, it said. So, the Lord incarnates in this material world in whatever way he so desires. Of course, like Krishna, when he came, the demigods went to this milk ocean and prayed to Vishnu there, and asked him to come and help, because the world was overfilled with demoniac people. And so, Vishnu instructed, okay, I'm going to come down and all of you need to take birth in this same lineage, and we're all going to go down there and, eradicate the demons and also display my pastime. So Krishna chooses when he wants to take birth. He isn't forced to take birth like we are. We're forced by these modes of material nature that we're bound up by. It's like as if we're chained up. And due to our lusty desires, our material desires from birth, we are taking different births based on our karma and what we desire. So I think I might have mentioned it before, but there's this Indian prime minister, I believe it was, and Prabhupada said that he had taken birth as a dog in a rich man's family in Sweden or Switzerland or something like that in his next life. So this is actually the fate of most materialists these days. They live such degraded, sinful lives, and they may be so rich and famous and powerful and have many opulences, at least in our eyes, in this life, but due to their inability to, or unwillingness, you could say, to turn to Krishna and to surrender to the Lord, they end up in this cycle of birth and death. It's ashadatana purusha dharmasyasya parantapa aprapya mam nivartante mrityu sangsaravartmani, that those who lack faith in this devotional service, and ultimately who lack faith in Krishna himself and who are atheistic in that way, they do not attain me, Krishna says. Instead, they attain this repeated cycle of birth and death. And this is ultimately the greatest fear that we can have as conditioned living souls, is that we forget about devotional service, we forget about Krishna, and we end up continuing on in this cycle of birth and death, going down to the lower forms of species, the animal life, where there's no possibility of remembering Krishna in those forms, unless you have a very special case like Gajendra, something like that. So this is ultimately what we are very afraid of, but we're also very fortunate because Krishna is said to protect his devotees. So as long as we're faithfully engaged in this process and following the orders of the spiritual master, following the orders of Krishna, it's laid down and as laid down in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, doing what Krishna likes, not what we like, we will be guaranteed to be relieved of this burden of birth and death, and be relieved of this fear. This, what is it? Sarvadharma Prijam, Mamikam Sharanam Aham Tam Sarvapapebhyo Mokshayasami Mashucha. Mashucha means not fear, right? Yeah, so, that if we just surrender to Krishna and we give up everything else, we don't have to fear anymore. We don't have to worry because he's going to take care of us. He's going to deliver us from this, and he's going to eradicate all of our sinful reactions. Ultimately, we can't do it on our own. The yogis and the jnanis, they mistakenly try to go about this process by doing everything of their own power, with their own intellectual power and their own willpower, and they try to control, the yogis try to control the life airs within the body, and it's being spoken about here, this life air that's leaving the body through the navel. There's that picture that's I think it's in the Bhagavad Gita, of the yogi that's living very austerely, and his body is just skin and bones. Oh, easy journey to other planets, yeah. Yeah. So, and he's got the long matted hair and all these things, and it's spoken of that if you undergo this, I guess it's Ashtanga yoga process, that you're able to control the life airs within the body, and then you can leave your body instead of through this navel, I suppose, as most people do, is spoken here, that you can leave through the top of your head and go up to the heavenly planets in that way. Crown chakra, yeah, exactly. So this is a very complicated process, and these yogis are doing all kinds of crazy things, like Dhruva Maharaj this past time, he went to the forest and he was all alone in the forest, just subsisting off of fruits for some time, and then after that, I think he just started eating leaves or something for a few months, and then after a few months of that, he just stopped eating altogether, and he was just completely controlling the breath, the life air within his body, and just subsisting off of, without breathing. He wasn't even actually breathing anymore. So this is a very complicated process, obviously, that we could never approach in this Kali Yuga as, conditioned living souls living in Kali Yuga. we can't even, there's actually not even any proper brahmanas, it's said, that can properly conduct certain sacrifices and such. So, this idea of controlling the life airs within the body, and this also takes a lot of time. It's said that thousands of years it takes to become liberated through this process of meditation and Ashtanga yoga. So when humans lived for longer, it was more reasonable. And in other yugas, this is the method of realization. But in Kali Yuga, the method of attaining perfection is much, much easier, much more simple. And especially in Lord Chaitanya's movement, that we just have this Sankirtan movement and we engage in the congregational chanting of the holy names. We chant on our beads and we chant in kirtan and we chant on the streets. And we chant by going and distributing books and giving people this knowledge. This is also Sankirtan. And so this is a very easy process that we can all engage in. Anybody off the street can come engage in it. We see you could say the lowest, the most animalistic people, you could say, that we go on Harinam sometime, and people that are very intoxicated or such, actually almost as if they're more qualified. Hear that knocking? So, anyways, it's almost as if they're more qualified to receive the mercy because their inhibitions are gone when they're very intoxicated, and they dance and chant with us. Kalki Prabhu was mentioning this gentleman that was, he's become kind of a meme in our group chat, this I Feel It guy. And it was a homeless guy that we met on Harinam like last year, and it was really amazing. We still talk about it. We've actually met him a few times on Harinam, and every single time he goes crazy and like gets really happy, and he becomes very blissful. And he even said at one point, he said, Krishna is the best in the world, and like he's glorifying Krishna. He has no idea what he's saying, He doesn't know who Krishna is. He just hears us saying Krishna. He thinks that we're just like Krishna or something. I don't know. And he just, he's drunk out of his mind. But he's, getting so much benefit. And also, Chandanacharya Prabhu made the point that, we have a lot of these videos that we send, just funny things that we might not necessarily like share with everybody else, but like, just like really, sweet people we meet on books and such, and like, funny interactions we have. And these people, they have no idea that they've become like dear to the devotees in some way. And like, they're being thought of by the devotees a lot, actually. So it's really actually for their benefit that devotees are thinking nicely about them and lovingly towards them and hoping them the best. So they're actually getting so much benefit and they have no idea. They just ran into some monks and maybe bought some books, on the street, and they have no idea what's going on. So this is a very amazing process. It's open to anyone. Even the most fallen are actually the most qualified. And so we can engage in that. And I wanted to I'll kind of change gears here a little bit. So this verse is speaking about the navel again. So there's a couple different examples of the importance of the navel in the Srimad Bhagavatam, especially that, of course, this is mentioned in the purport here that Lord Brahma was born of the abdominal hole of Garbhodakshai Vishnu as a separate body. So, we have this wonderful painting over here of Lord Brahma being born out of this sprouted lotus flower that came out of the navel of Garbhodakshai Vishnu. And so this same phenomenon is carrying on in some reflection or some different way in terms of the baby is born from the mother and it's connected to the mother, again, via this navel. So this navel is actually a very important part of our bodies, and I had never really considered it in that way. But this is how, again, it's being explained that this is the way that the Supreme Lord manifested himself as separated many. So this is just talking about the mechanics of how this happens. And one thought I had about this was how detailed this Bhagavatam can go into the creation and how the living entities are created and exactly who does what and what the order of different living entities that are created from the beginning of the universe, and how Brahma, did the secondary creation and these different expansions of Vishnu and all of these. It's so detailed and so explicit. It's written out in very extreme detail where you can learn everything you want, and then you can get to the point where you have no idea what's going on because it's so much detail. It's so complicated, it seems. And then I was just contrasting in my mind for some reason. It reminded me of this, the very beginning of the Bible. It says, God said, let there be light, and there was light, and it was good. And so, and it's talking about, and then he rested, and the next day he created the ocean or something like. And I read through that just yesterday preparing for this, and I was thinking, it's just so stark contrast. You can see it just glosses over the creation and says, okay, he created light, he created water, he created land, and then it was all good. And then he created entity, living beings, and then he created humans, and then he created vegetables or whatever. It's just very simplistic, very okay. It basically glossed over the first canto of Bhagavatam is called creation, right? So it details the cosmic creation and the manifestation. And then other cantos also go over that. As we're seeing here, this is second canto. It's also discussing that. And I'm sure there's so much more in the Vedic literature about creation that is not just in Bhagavatam. That details it even more. And it goes into so much detail about the modes of material nature and again, like I was saying, the expansions of Vishnu and what their different roles are, and then how the living entities are coming from Vishnu and all these things, and why the material world exists, whereas the Bible just very quickly glosses over that whole entire thing with a few sentences. Side note, I wanted to mention that this could be good for preaching. When I was reading that first part of, Genesis, it also mentioned, I'm trying to remember I can't remember the exact words, but the point that was made was, okay, God created the animals, and then he created the plants and the fruits, the vegetables and fruits. And it specifically says in there that God created that, and then he said, okay, this is your food, the vegetables and the fruits. Yeah, exactly. And it said okay, this should be your food. It doesn't say anything, the animal part doesn't say anything about that being food. So they say that, the argument is that God gave us dominion over the animals, and it says that, that man shall have dominion over the animals, and so therefore we can kill them and eat them. That's their argument. But there's this very simple analogy that if someone gave you dominion over their children to babysit them, and they came back and you were cooking them up in a stew, that would not be so nice. So dominion doesn't necessarily mean that you control them and kill them and eat them. It means that you are meant to protect them, which is, again, this is in line with, what we understand, that we should be protecting the animals, that we should protect, specifically we should protect the cow. This is our mother. So, yeah, that was a little side point I wanted to make. Let's see what else. Yeah, the other point that was with this navel, that I was just contemplating on, is that the child and the mother, have such a close relationship, and a lot of that stems from the fact that the mother actually, the child is growing inside of the body of the mother for 9 months, and then again it's actually connected via this navel joint, this umbilical cord is what they cut, and so this is. The mother and the child, it said that this is the closest relationship in this material world to actual love that's, in the spiritual world, that unconditional love and an attitude of service that the mother has for the child. But of course, it's still based on the bodily concept of life, because you see that, again, this child is being born, or growing inside of the body, and then is born from the mother. And so the mother is under the illusion that this child is my child, and I have this very intimate relationship with this person specifically. But actually, we have nothing to do with these bodies, as we learn, and this is all based on the illusion created by material nature to keep us within this illusion. So ultimately, the correct understanding is that I'm a spirit soul, you're a spirit soul. We're both servants of Krishna, and by serving Krishna together, then we can develop a proper relationship on a spiritual platform. And if a mother engages her child in that way, then it's correct. But again, most mothers, they are under the illusion that this child is my child, and I have a very close relationship with this person, even though, again, it's more or less like sticks that are coming together in a river for some time, and they might be very close, and then after some time, the tide takes them away. It's a temporary arrangement. There's this story in the Bhagavatam of King Chitraketu, is it? I believe that he is praying for a son, and he's begging for a son, and then who was it that gave him the benediction? Narada Muni or something? Yeah, someone gave him the benediction that he would have a son, right? But it would cause him a lot of problems.
I think it was Narada who gave me that.
I think, yeah.
I don't remember so well.
Anyways, yeah, so I believe it was Narada Muni that came and he, begged, please, I want to have a son. And Narada Muni said, okay, you will, but it will cause you great happiness and great misery. And then the son was born in due time, and the king's co-wives became jealous of this son and of the mother that bore the son, because none of them were able to bear a son for the king. And so because of this envy, they ended up poisoning the child, killing it, and in the cradle, when it was just a baby. And of course the king was grief-stricken. He went from so happy that he had finally gotten a son. Narada and Parvat Munis, Mahota Prabhu said. Okay. So, he was very happy that he had finally gotten a son, and then very quickly that happiness turned into the deepest grief, seeing that his son had been killed. And then I guess the Narada Muni and Parvat Munis came back, and they said, basically we told you this would happen, and then they brought the baby back to life somehow. I don't know the details, but
Basically, Narada has the baby speak.
Yeah, the baby spoke, and then the baby, was in the consciousness of realizing that it wasn't the body, and it had remembered all of its different past lives. So to the point where, King Chitraketu was saying, "Oh, my son, I'm so glad you're here." And then the baby said, "Wait, which father are you? I'm not. I've had so many fathers, so many mothers. I couldn't even remember." So this is all actually the arrangement of material nature. This is an illusion that we're put under, that we have these bodily relationships. And this is what binds us to this material world and keeps us in this cycle of birth and death. Because, again, it said that whatever you are thinking of at the time of death, that is what you will go to. This is, I don't know the exact reference, but there's this, we were talking about it before, this verse of if one worships the ancestors, he goes to the plane of the ancestors. If he worships... What is that verse? Do you know?
Numbers.
Yanti Deva?
Yanti Deva Vrata Devan, Pitun Yanti Pitu Vrata. Bad with numbers, you know this.
Let's see.
925.
925, yeah, okay. Those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship the ancestors go to the ancestors. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings, and those who worship me will live with me. So, man mana bhava mad bhakto mad yaji mam namaskru mama vaishashu yukt vaiva mat mana mat parayana, that, simply become my devotee, always worship me and with devotion, and surely you will come to me. Krishna is promising us this. And he says that, of course, he says in the 18th chapter that he promises us this because we are his very dear friend. He's speaking to Arjuna, but we can understand that it applies to all living entities, that we're very dear to Krishna, and he wants us to come to him ultimately. But again, he gives us free will, so we can choose what we want to do. We can worship the ancestors or the demigods or whatever, of course, which all of these things are less intelligent to do. So let's see, I covered that. Yeah, and then I was just thinking, in terms of this verse, that this is just a really good reminder, at least for me, that death is inevitable, that we're going to die. This is the creation of the mechanism through which the air leaves the body, and then and the air of departure and death were combinedly created. So there's this mechanism in this material world of death, that everything is temporary, and whatever body we're inhabiting is only for a limited amount of time. And because of that, this world is full of so many miseries, because even if you have the most amazing life, the death will come, and Krishna will come in the form of time to take you away from all of these so-called wonderful things that you've been enjoying. So this is why, sense gratification and bodily relationships and operating on terms of this aham mameti platform, I, me, and mine, is ultimately it's a trap. It can be compared to a trap. It's a misconception, and it's a mindset that leads us to unlimited suffering. You could say almost unlimited suffering, because we've been in this material world for countless births and deaths, actually. So this idea of death, it's scary to many people. Again, speaking about videos that I've seen, I was doing some research on this as well, and I saw this video of this. There was like this little girl in a car, and she I guess it was like the moment she realized that she was gonna die or something like that, and like the death was a thing, and she's like crying. She's like 5 years old, and she's like crying and like saying like she just can't believe it. Like she's just like really like distraught, and she didn't realize that death is gonna happen, and have to die someday. But the parents, you have to die. It's okay. Like we all do, and like you could tell that like the kid was having more like a proper reaction to it, actually. That the urgency of life and the tragedy or the intensity of death. That this is everything is ripped away from you. This is a very serious thing. This is not just as if the parent was making it seem like, oh, it's not a big deal, it happens to all of us. It happens to all of us, yeah, but it's a very serious thing. Because, and it's a serious thing for any living entity, because it's a point of suffering. Even the pig is attached to its pig family, the dog is attached to its dog family, the cockroach is attached to its cockroach family, but humans especially, it's especially important for us to, well, first of all, we have the ability to contemplate upon death and understand that it's coming to us at any moment, but also we have this ability to take up Krishna consciousness. I mentioned it so many times, this Labdvat Sudur Labham verse 11.9.29, that this human form of life is very rare, and one attains it after many, many births and deaths. And if one is sober, he will quickly endeavor for this highest perfection of life, Krishna consciousness, because this is only available in the human form of life, whereas all this sense gratification and all this such things are available even to the lowest forms of life. So this idea of death is especially pertinent to human beings, and again, because we can actually discuss it and talk about it and contemplate upon that. I believe there's Buddhists, one certain sect of them, that they contemplate on death, part of their meditation is they just think about death like all the time or something, which is, it's one level, it's good in a way. Of course, so much of their philosophy is wrong in a lot of ways, very atheistic, but this is a good thing to contemplate upon. It's much better than not doing it at all. But you see that, actually we go out on the street and we talk to people, and sometimes this comes up when we're preaching, is, we talk about death, and, aren't you you're in this cycle of birth and death, you want to get out of this, and no, I'm okay, I've accepted death, it's okay, I'm actually okay with it. I know that nothing's going to be there afterwards. I know this and that. It'll be peaceful. Actually, some people I meet, they say, I want to die. It's really sad, actually, but, so people are very covered over in terms of this, and I remember growing up, I was the same way, thinking about this, that I was similar to that child. I resonated with that so this is all going to end, what's the point of all this then, what are we doing, why are we going on with this idea that everything's good and everything's okay, everything's dandy. But then, my parents, the same way, they just kind of, no, it's okay, don't worry about it so much, don't think about it. And it really kind of made me, distressed, wow, this is crazy. So then, yeah, it led me in so many different wrong ways, and then, luckily, I received the mercy of the devotees and ended up here. There's this Bahunam Jan Manamante Gyanavan Man Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha, that after many, many births, one who's in knowledge surrenders unto me, Krishna says. And such a soul is very rare, actually. So you see it, again, like I said, most people out there are completely covered by this and think that, no, it's fine, and whatever. They come up with their own conception of what death is, and then they somehow convince themselves that that's just the real thing. That's what it is. Whatever anybody believes that death is, that's what it actually is for them. My mother has the idea that, well, I'll see her parents died when she was young, so she says, oh, well, when I die, I'm going to go see them, and I'll go to heaven, and they'll be there. It's like, and I'm like, but how do you know that? She said, no, I just believe it. Like, it's just accept it, and then it's just like a hope. It's just like a desperate hope that, maybe this is how it is. So then, like, I can continue on with my, like, nonsense and just living in this illusion. If I just believe this one thing, okay, cool, I'll just believe that, and I'll be good. But ultimately, we have to understand how to go beyond this birth and death, how to transcend this, how to get out of this cycle. Because again, you can worship these different things like demigods and ancestors and such and go to their planets, but it's all actually worthless. Even going to the highest heavenly planet in this material world is no use, because we're still subject to these four things: birth, death, old age, and disease. And ultimately, it means everything is temporary for us in that situation, and there can be no happiness on this temporary platform. It's a shaky platform that there is no satisfaction, there is no security. If you live in a place that has a bunch of earthquakes and you don't know when the next one's going to happen, you're going to be in anxiety a lot of the time, actually, thinking about that. And we were talking about, actually, at lunch yesterday or breakfast, that this astrology, that's studying this and reading your chart and getting your readings done and understanding about, like, what's ahead for you in the future, isn't always the best idea, because it actually can be a big impediment to Krishna consciousness. Because if for example, that you have a big accident that's going to happen to you this year, you're going to be very much in the mindset of, oh, what's going to happen? Like, when's it going to happen to me? How is it going to happen to me? I don't know. And you're going to be in this accident consciousness, or like, what's going to happen to me consciousness, which again brings us more to like the bodily idea of life, and that I am this body, and what's going to happen to this body is going to happen to me. Whereas if we don't know about that, either way it's going to happen to us, whether we know about it or not. So when it happens, we should deal with it in whatever way we best can. And otherwise, we should just try to be absorbed in Krishna consciousness. Try to spend every moment simply engage in this process of Krishna consciousness, Shravanam, Kirtanam, mainly and especially. And we should just try to absorb ourselves 24/7 in full-time service. We have a very unique and blessed opportunity here to do that. Most people would very much like that opportunity. So many people come to Krishna consciousness and they already have so many worldly obligations, and they might be married with kids, and they have a mortgage, they have a 9-to-5 job, and they have they're managing people at work that are that need them, and all these things, and they're completely tied up and bound and obligated in different ways in material life. And their spouse might not be in the Krishna consciousness, their kids might be little demons, and you never know. So the idea of coming here without any of those obligations, that we get to be simply focused 100% every day on trying to absorb ourselves in Krishna consciousness, help others become absorbed in it, distribute books and preach and make devotees, distribute prasadam, do simple things like cleaning the temple, and just having nice conversations with the devotees, loving exchanges. Travel, we get to travel the world. The devotees just got back from India. They went on this amazing yatra and went to go see all the amazing holy places of India. And I'm sure that, I know that they've been so inspired, like Abhimanyu Sutta Prabhu and Bhakti Nali were telling just some of the stories of the different places they went and the deities that they got to see, and just the stories of these different pastimes and places. And it was very like, wow, this is amazing. Like, we hear about it so much here, and it's kind of like a theory in our head or something like that. but it seems like it becomes more concrete for them there, and like you could actually see face to face what you're talking about day in and day out in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes and Krishna's pastimes and all the acharyas and their appearance places and the deities they worshipped and such. And then they brought all this nice prasadam back from India, from the Dham, which is really nice that we get to have some Mahaprasadam from the Dham. But yeah, so we have such a blissful life. The devotees right now, they were in Miami this past weekend, and before that, Chandanacharya Prabhu was in D.C., and then some devotees are in Virginia Beach. They're just always in a different place, and I don't know if the Mataji saw these videos. I think it might have just been it was on Krishna Life Sankirtan, the Harinam that they went on in Miami 2 nights ago, I guess it was. They got back from books, and then they were telling me on the phone that they got back from books, and it was a day that Jacob did 12 Bhagavatams. So they were like super fired up. They like talked to Bhakta Jacob on the phone, and like it was like so. I mean, that was so inspiring itself. And then they took down some like amazing prasadam that Janardhan Krishna Prabhu made, and then they're like, should we go on Harinam? Like it's getting late. Like it's kind of late. And then Bhakta Mesa's like, please guys, like it's my first TSKP trip. Like please, I really want to go. And then okay, we'll go. So they all went. Like there's like 6 of them out there, and there's like 20 videos of it that Bhakta Max made, and they look so blissful. And like it was St. Patty's Day, so all these people were drunk, and there's so many people on the street dancing, and they were in the bars and everything. So blissful. And then they came back and they hung out some more, and it just seemed like a big, amazing night. Big party. I really wish I was there, but it's blissful here too, of course. I got the fortune of welcoming Vishnuchita Prabhu back to America. That was my good fortune. I got to be there at the airport to pick him up, so that was nice. And so they were kind of fried out about that in Miami a little bit. But anyways, it's a blissful life. We get so much amazing opportunities. We get to travel. We get to preach to people that are interested. We get to distribute books, and please our spiritual master in that way. And the bliss that comes from that. Even seeing, Bhakta Jacob, seeing other people distribute books is so blissful. I was so happy to see that video of him explaining all the Bhagavatams that he did. And we posted it on the channel, on Christian Life Media, for everyone to see that. It's so blissful. You're seeing like, wow, this person, and you've seen them coming off the street and, not practicing Krishna consciousness full time and, just being completely new to doing this, and it's very like, wow, this is amazing to see the transformation that one person goes through in less than a year, so all glories to him and his service. So yeah, this life is not all in all as the karmis think. This is not all that there is. Our soul is transmigrating from one birth to another, and there was never a time when Krishna says, there was never a time where I, nor you, nor these kings did not exist. Neither will there be a time where they cease to be. We all cease to be. So we are, infinite, eternal living beings, not infinite. We're eternal living beings in this material world and transmigrating from birth to birth. And ultimately the idea is we have to escape this birth and death. We have to go beyond birth and death and go to the spiritual world where we can engage in, uninterrupted devotional service all the time and not have any fear of the material modes of nature or anything like that. Ultimately, actually, we don't even have to go to the spiritual world to do that. We just have to become pure devotees in this world. And, Krishna will completely protect us. We'll have direct darshan of the super soul, and we will not come back down to this material platform ever again once we attain this. So this is the ultimate goal of life and what we're striving for here. And, we should engage with enthusiasm, determination, and such. And we should contemplate on this death, contemplate on the fact that death is coming for us at any moment. Again, there's this story of this devotee, this really sad story in New Talavan, that he was a younger devotee, and one day, I think he was driving to Mangalarti, and these windy roads are very narrow, and he ended up in a car accident, and he left his body. And so we don't know when it's going to happen to us. It could happen at any moment. Don't think that it's only for the 80-year-olds that, get sick and then they die, so I have so much time left. We like to think that way, I'd like to think that way because I want to say, I want to do this service and that service in my life, but ultimately we don't know when it's going to come. Krishna could come and arrange for things to happen that, we leave this body sooner than we think. So we should be very aware of that. We should be very sober in this way, and soberly endeavor for perfection that's only available in this human form of life, again, like I mentioned. And another thing I like to contemplate on in terms of this is that this human form of life on this planet specifically that we're at is very ideal for it, because there's not so much suffering that, it's like the hellish planets where we're completely overwhelmed by suffering, and it's not so much enjoyment like the heavenly planets that we're completely overwhelmed and caught up in that. There's just a mix of both, and it's enough suffering to understand that this material world is completely full of suffering and we need to get out of it, but not so much that we're completely overwhelmed by it and unable to endeavor for this Krishna consciousness. So we should endeavor with faith, enthusiasm, and sincerity, and all perfection is guaranteed. And again, it's a completely blissful process that, so many people out there would love to experience. And once again, as Kalki Prabhu was mentioning, that a lot of older devotees that, they lived like this, or they were brahmachari before, and then they, moved to the married ashram, and they fondly look back on this time of distributing books and traveling and just being with their godbrothers and godsisters, and being fully 100% immersed in Krishna consciousness and service and book distribution, living austerely and all these things. But they look back on this time as the best time of their life, and they often tell us to not take it for granted, to understand what we have. And I'm very much so appreciating to myself in this way, because it's easy to become a little complacent, comfortable, but we should push ourselves. We should stay in that stretch zone, as Parameshwar Prabhu says. We should just always be a little bit outside of our comfort zone and always pushing a little bit, and trying to expand this movement and engage in service full time. Because when we're fully immersed in the service, when our mind is fully meditating upon how can we do more service, do our services better, and improve in this way, improve that way, expand this, expand that, there's no question of Maya, actually. This, you can notice you become fully engrossed in this. As I witness, Avadhu Chandra Prabhu out there on the farm every day. He's fully engrossed in this, fully absorbed. Like, he takes breakfast and he's out there. Like, he's just going so intensely at it, but not at a point that's so much that he's gonna burn out. He's manageable, but it's also very much intense, So I hope to emulate that in some way, and of course all the other devotees here are doing that as well, in their book distribution and other services. So I hope to learn from them and emulate their behavior in that way. Cool, so that's kind of what I wanted to cover in the class. It's 8:47. If we have any questions, comments, or corrections, please feel free to ask. I'm not sure if Mahota Prabhu has anything. No, he's not calling, so.
Oh wait, turn the other. There's a switch on the mic itself.
I have this one.
Oh, you have that on.
And this thing might not be on. This the receiver. I'm not sure.
Anyways, I guess I can just say it for the devotees on.
They'll hear it.
Yeah, we can hear you. So yeah.
You were mentioning about death as one of the main topics of your class. I was hearing Srila Prabhupada. He writes this in the Bhagavatam, and it's in line with this verse that you quote, and also Mahotsa Prabhu quotes in Srila Bhakti Santa Saraswati Thakur, Labva Sudur Lamidam.
Yeah.
Prabhupada was writing actually that the human form of life is so valuable, and then when there's a death in society, people are, so concerned, but yet at the same time so many animals are being killed.
Yeah.
But the society in general, they appreciate how valuable the human form of life is. And as devotees, of course, we're concerned that animals are being killed. But you can see that even in modern society, people, they understand the importance of life. So, and I was thinking also about this whole Buddhist thing, how you were mentioning how they contemplate death. And I remember hearing my Guru Maharaj share something when he was a young boy. He came across this Buddhist book that he read, and there was a statement in there saying that if you were to take all of the bodies that you were in and you were to stack them up, it would block out the sun. I thought that was really far out. I mean, it's kind of like eerie, like the whole Buddhist thing.
Well,
But
very contemplative like that.
yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true. So many countless births and deaths. It's insane. Yeah, and then we get this, instead of this rare human form of life, how many births and deaths we went through to get this. So to not waste it is very, very imperative. Yeah. Anything else for the men? Yeah, Mataris? Yeah, Mataris.
You were mentioning about how family ties, they're temporary in this life. And I was just curious as far as when one takes to the process of Krishna consciousness, I've heard that a devotee, if a devotee becomes a pure devotee, they liberate their families 7 generations forward and 7 generations back. But in the midst of us living, does Krishna also take charge of our families' lives? And then also, what is that liberation that happens for the family?
Yeah, I've been hearing different opinions on that. Hold on, my husband was calling. I'm not sure if he has something to say about this. Hare Krishna Prabhu?
Hey, Pranam.
Pranam Prabhu, you have something to say about Matari's question?
I don't know what question she has.
Oh.
Whenever she's done, I can say something.
Okay, I'm just going to answer her question, then I'll talk to you, okay?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, Hare Krishna. So, as far as I'm aware, what I've heard is that basically, because our family is dear to us, and Krishna is, favorable to his devotees. That if he loves his devotees, and so he wants them to, he wants who they love to also be taken care of as well. It's so yeah, he takes care of, again, our family in that way. So the family is actually extremely benefited by someone taking up Krishna consciousness seriously, even to any level. You can see practically Bhakta Jacob's, pretty much everyone's family actually. Abdu Chandra Prabhu, his father gave, big donation, gave a van to the temple, so he got so much benefit. My family has taken some prasadam. Bhakta Jacob's family, again, his dad's giving a lot of donations and taking a lot of prasadam, and they went and stayed there in New Orleans, so it gave them a place to stay. So many things. So when a person takes up Krishna consciousness and the family is somewhat favorable, they get a lot of benefit because they're also secondarily engaged in that devotional service in some way. But even if they're unfavorable, it's still said that Krishna will still liberate them. And as far as I'm aware, it's not that they just go back to Godhead in this life and they go straight back to Godhead, even if they've never chanted or anything like that. But from my understanding, again, what I've heard from other devotees is that they begin this process basically, and their liberation is assured basically, because once you start the process of Krishna consciousness, it's only a matter of time before you perfect yourself. So, they're able to begin this journey, and yeah, as far as what I understand. Is that everything about your? Was there another aspect of it? Okay, that's it. Let me see. Okay, Mahotsa Prabhu, you can go ahead.
Yeah, Pranam Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So, we weren't kind of fired up, we were very fired up that you didn't tell us about Vishnu coming.
Yeah.
And
Are you fried out with him or with me?
you mainly, and him.
What did you say?
More him than you.
Huh?
More him than you for sure.
Vishnu said that you can be fried out with him, not with me.
Anyway, I don't have to listen like that, but so Another thing too, it's not the Buddhist, but it's in Burma, it's a state law that every day you should meditate 5 minutes on death.
It's a what? State law, you said?
Yeah, from the government, that everyone has to meditate on death for 5 minutes.
Where?
Burma.
Burma. Okay, Burma. Wow.
And in regards to this Narada Muni getting, what's his name? Chitraketu's son is called Harsha Shoka. And he lives for 5 years actually.
Oh, really?
Giving great bliss. And then, he dies, and then that's the whole thing. Anyway, other than that, I don't have much to say.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Okay. Anything else, Mataji's or anything? Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vancha kapatubhischa kapisindhuvivcha, patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Oh man.